We're just doing our pre-show jam. We're just doing our pre-show jam here.
All right, welcome to the Business Helping Business live stream portion of our day. And I have the wonderful team of people with me, Lee Hodgins, Glenn Walker, and David Kincaid. Today's subject is going to be about how to start a business with grants, which can be really valuable in this time. But before we get to that, I have a thank you. I've said thank you to Gordon many times, and another time today I'm going to give Gordon a round of applause for myself. He's been helping me out technically. But there's another thank you that I've missed on the last two because we always forget to say thank you, or I do, to my friends. Stephen Defoe, the owner of Morinville News. Morinville News has partnered with us, and they've been from the beginning streaming this out or sharing this out onto the Morinville News Facebook site to help other businesses. And I've forgotten to thank him every single time. And I can tell you, as a business owner in Morinville, my partnership with him, where I buy advertising just like everybody else, and he shares my social media feeds, it's really helping my business, especially in this time when I don't have nearly the social media audience that he does. So if you're not advertising with him, I would recommend that you do, because at this point, you definitely need to be able to get your message out on social media, and he can help you with that. And Stephen, from the bottom of my heart, I'm sorry that I didn't say thank you on the last two, and thank you on this one. It really means a lot to me that you're supporting this stream. Okay, we are going to get to it, and we'll be right back. All right, so I'm going to unmute my guests who I was trying to keep muted in the portion before. And you guys, I know you guys were all excited to chat with each other because we're all friends offline. But I want to introduce David Kincaid, who you've seen before, who's a grant writer, owns Alberta Business Grants, and he's going to give us a presentation today on how to start a business with grants. David, you are up, my friend.
Thanks, Paul. Hi, guys. Today, just thought it's the number one question I get asked as I've been in grants for a long time. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of who I am. And I get asked all the time, how do you start a business with grants? So today I'm basically going to give you a few tips. Some of it's kind of a letdown because there's a lot of myths around starting a grant. And I'm going to hopefully just educate you a bit on that. So basically what I'm going to do is tell you a bit about myself, give you a little bit of background on, not too much because I don't want to bore the heck out of you. The second thing I'm going to do is tell you about election platforms and sort of how they work, a couple of the major sectors for grants, and just a couple of programs that if you're watching this today, where you could go to find a grant to kind of launch your business. So Paul, I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay.
That's perfect. That's perfect.
I just got a couple of, you can see that okay?
Yes, I can.
Okay, great. So just a quick bit of background on me. The reason I wanted to tell you just a bit about where I come from, I think most people that come to grants, fundamentally, the majority don't understand them. And that's because grants they're governments giving money to nonprofits and for-profit businesses. But oddly, like most people want to get into business, study business, or they study accounting, or they study marketing, but they've they didn't take Intro to Poli-Sci 101. And so what happened to me, that was kind of my background. This is my GPA in first year university. This is the actual transcript. I had a 1.6 GPA on a 4.3 scale. Now, if you're paying attention at home, that's an F. I was terrible. But lo and behold, I one day walked into this political science class and things just clicked. I actually went to the student center and was like, help me. I want to learn how to do this. They gave me this great little book, which kind of changed my life, actually. If you're a student, it's still all relevant today. But anyway, lo and behold, I get into politics. And I say this not to show you my grades, but to tell you how passionate I was about and how fascinating politics is. Like, people don't quite think about it, but politicians, they control everything. They control the education system. They control the financial markets, the post-secondary. They charge funding to that. So you kind of step back a bit. You think, wow, politicians actually do run everything. And I always say that's what you want, right? You don't want, Lee and Glenn and Paul running all areas of your life. Now, they might want you to run all areas of your life, but you want someone that's going to run everything, that when they do a bad job, you can what? You can throw them to the curb. And that's the way our system's built. So it's these people get elected, they all of a sudden collect all the taxes, and then they have to do something. They have to allocate it, right? So they're going to do it in spending, they're going to do it in education. But one of the ways they do it is through supporting the economy. And how are you going to do that? Well, you can cut taxes, but one of the best things you can do is dangle a carrot, just like I always describe it kind of like a speeding ticket. Like, why do you not speed when you're driving most of the time? Because you're afraid to get a ticket. Well, grants are this really strange, fascinating might be a better word. They dangle a carrot and they say, hey, would you like some free money that you don't need to pay back, right? And boom, people are like, yeah, I'll do it. Now, it gets super complex, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you a couple programs of how this hits the street. So you're at home watching this and starting a business. But more importantly than me showing you a program too, is just to get your mindset around how these work. Because people who start to figure this out can just explode their business, because they can start to understand, oh, that's how the government's allocating capital. That's how my digital marketing company can capitalize on grants. So basically the next step would be figuring out they have an election platform. So they're like, hey, we're going to reduce emissions, or we're going to diversify the economy from oil and gas. Well, how do you do that? And the way they do that is with grants. So before I jump into a couple programs, because I don't want to go too long here, I'll just tell you a funny story. So I ended up working at my first job was at the Alberta legislature, and I became the finance researcher. So you saw my background in politics. I'm working on politics, and I get this job in the opposition, and I sit down with the MLA, the late Rick Miller, awesome guy. And he said, Dave, get me in the newspaper. And I thought, well, that's pretty easy. Like, I'll just find out where they are spending money, and we'll question them on, how they allocating their funds. And I said, I'm going to go look at grants. Well, one of the grants I found early on, it always shocked me when I found this. I'm like, there's no way that a frat house got a grant for furniture. Well, sure enough, they did. And by the way, to this day, I still think the person that wrote that grant application is the greatest grant writer that has ever and will ever live. Because if you can get a grant for frat house furniture, I am not worthy. Okay. Like, I am not worthy. You are amazing. So anyways, we FOIP it. They went to the, oh, there it is there. You can see, I think it says Urban Bar, and they went to the Urban. Yeah, there it is there, right there in the middle of the screen. And they splurged. So really funny. So I, at an early age, got fascinated with grants, which will move me, I guess, the first big lesson here was, wow, they give grants for nonprofits, but also I discovered they give them to for-profits, which freaks a lot of people out initially. They're like, whoa, why are you giving money to for-profit companies? Now, let's just throw it out there for fun for a second. Gordon, you can participate in this as well. Why would the government give money to for-profit organizations? Anyone want to take a stab at it?
Before we do that, stop sharing your screen for a second, and then everybody will be able to see people as they speak and respond back in. Yeah, there we go. So, sorry, the question is?
So why would the government give money to for-profit businesses? Why would they do that?
Does it help stimulate economy?
I guess.
I'm just stuck on the fact that David Kincaid is the second best grant writer of all time, and the first one is the guy that wrote it for the frat house. But after that, the businesses would be writing grants. I would actually give the exact same answer that Gordon did to stimulate economy, but I would also think it's to stimulate sectors that the government cares about, like sectors that they are wanting to be more supportive of.
Well, Paul, now you're getting at it, which is surprise, surprise. It's what they want. It's not what you want. They didn't get elected. They run on something called an election platform, which you're all familiar of. And then they need to meet it, because at the next election campaign, they need to say, hey, we ran on this platform and we achieved our objectives and we're great. And that's why you should reelect us. And their opposition are saying, you bums, you said you would do this and you didn't do this. So there's this clash of, oh, we said we'd create jobs. We said we'd reduce emissions. We said we'd diversify our economy. But when you get into how you do that, it's so hard. So what they do is they say, well, we're going to reduce emissions. Now we're going to say Lee here is an entrepreneur that is reducing emissions. But Lee's realizing, holy crap, this is going to be a lot of money to come up with a new technology that's going to reduce emissions. And the government says, okay, we get it. So we'll de-risk that project. We'll give you money. We'll pay for a third of it or 50% of it if you can come up with the other half, and away you go. So that is basically, in essence, why the government's in the grant business. Now I want to move to kind of starting a business. Why do you think it's hard for the government to throw money at startups? Glenn.
Hand up.
Because it's probably one of the highest risk investments you could make.
Yeah, it's a total crapshoot, right? It's like, so now you want these politicians who've been elected to give out cash to someone who says, I've got a really good idea. I want to start a business. Well, boo-hoo. Like, I'll tell you what, if we're all taxpayers on this, we would have a hard time agreeing of which startup we would fund, right? We would. Paul might say, I've been in business a long time. I don't like that one. Gordon would be sitting over there saying, I think it's awesome. And, Lee and me and Glenn would be flip-flopping all over the place on whether we fund it. So it's very difficult for them just to give out checks for startup businesses. So they do it in a different way. It's really confusing. And most people have no concept of how this works, but I'll show you how it works. So if we had more time, I'd play more games with you, because I actually have more fun playing games than I do just showing you what it is. But what they do is they come up with these things called delivery agents. And think of it like, well, we don't really want to be seen as giving out grants to our friends and get into trouble. We don't want to give out money to businesses that fail, because then the opposition is going to be like, you bum, why did you pick that company? It's called picking winners and losers. So what they do is they have these things called delivery agents, which makes it super confusing for people, because now the government's giving out money through a third party that has a different name and names the program something different. So you'll notice if you Google the word grant, the governments actually don't like that word, right? Because my personal opinion, why they don't like it is because it's like, it can kind of have a dirty connotation to it. It's like, oh, you're wasting money. You're giving out grants. Like it's a bit risky. So they'll be called almost anything but a grant, a fund, initiative, a program. almost anything but a grant. So that makes it more confusing. But let's get to the example. So you're sitting out there today, you're at home, you want to start a business and you want to do it at grants. Well, what they fund are organizations like this. So this is Micro Business Training Center. They now do online training, this program. And you go here. So I'm on their home pages, and then you go self-employment training. By the way, I took this program. It's awesome.
Nice.
So, but look at this. It's free government funded self-employment training. So if you're on EI, they do intakes. You can go in and you can get 8 weeks of training and coaching to get funded in business. Pretty clever, right? Like, so they're actually saying, hey, we'll fund the training. We'll get experts who are startup people funding, and they'll go forward and they'll deliver the training to startups. So go back to that election platform for a minute. They said, hey, we would get more entrepreneurs, more small business started. Well, this is the way they allocate the capital. Okay. Notice this isn't called the Start Your Business Grant Fund. Collect 10 grand now. Now, some of you at home saying, oh, Dave, that sucks. I wish that they did have that. Well, the second point of the 3 points I'm going to leave you is they actually do that. So if you go over here to the micro voucher, if you're a tech company, which is in their space, to Gordon's point earlier, Gordon was like, man, they want to diversify the economy. Yeah, they do. So they have Alberta Innovates, gives out these $10,000 grants, non-repayable, to a vendor, someone like Glenn, who is a digital marketing expert, that'll help you build out your plan. So kind of a really interesting way that they fund startups, right? They do it through a thing called a voucher, not a grant. Again, confusing. But if you're a tech company and you're just starting out, that's where they send you, help you build out your plan. And then they have more grants along the journey. Now, I don't want to go too far, so I'm going to end with one last kind of different area that I think is really fascinating with grants, and that relates to COVID. So let's say you're at home, you're manufacturing, you're struggling, and you're like, man, how do I get into grants? Well, the government is trying to solve COVID. And how do they do it? Well, they use grants. And so here are, if you go onto this page here, it's down at the bottom of the footer on my website down here. We're in it. It's actually called Solving COVID with Grants. It's not there now because this is open, but it's down there, or you can just go to that URL. But they have challenges, and they say, hey, look, so I don't know, like, let's look at this one here. You can click on this, and it's the 21st, and they have a grant looking to solve. You can receive up to $500,000 towards your innovation. Now we're talking. So hopefully you can kind of see how this is working. So it starts out some dude going into political science, then he gets a job at the legislature, watches all this money. Now over to you, it says, okay, this is why the government's into grants. They want to reduce emissions. They want to diversify the economy. They want more tech. They want more ag value processing. That's where you're going to find the grants. If you're that group of people over there that's like, well, I'm not in any of those, but I want to start a business. Boom, you go into the self-employment. And there's one in Calgary, and that's my timer. And then the third one is, if you're a business out there and you're kind of wanting to pivot or something, they actually have grants to help you solve COVID. So I don't have a lot of time, and I don't have time for my stories, which, are kind of the funnest part, but that is a background of grants and startups, and that's all I got. So if you got any questions, I'd be happy to take them or whatever.
David, I'm going to jump in right away because I've been fairly close to the announcements that have been, coming out from the Prime Minister and Premier every day. I did not see that grant. You're a grant expert, so it's not a shock to me that you found it. But I noticed that it opened April 9th. It's closing April 21, and they're having a hard time administering anything at the best of times right now. So that's a narrow window. How do we find out what applies to us and where to go look for these things?
Well, I'll show you actually on my site here. So there's a couple things you can do. One is I have a database of them for free here. So you can just come on and you can say, hey, I'm in agriculture. I'm just picking one. Actually, let's do music. I'm in music and I want to win a grant. And I'm in Alberta. I'm just going to put music here. I wonder if there's any grants for musicians. And you come on here. Whoa, we found 6 grants. Look at that. Individual music project funding. So that's one way that you can find grants. The other way, if you want to track them, is this thing called the Alberta Grant Gazette. Now, this comes out twice a month and it is paid, but it is awesome. And it tracks grants in all the different sectors. So you can just go on there and there's a video that can show you what it looks like. So that's 2 ways you can do it. The third way is you would just be going on all the different government websites and watching them constantly, which is a bit of a challenge, but that's another option.
You pretty well, like I had to, my wife, I had to dedicate that as one of her jobs to help our business through this. And yeah, you pretty well have to have one person doing that as almost a full-time job.
But Paul, they're different, right? So all those government programs that are getting announced right now, wage subsidies, loans, they're not really grants. It's not really my sector, right? Grants are, holy crap, COVID's complex. It's wiping us out. We're going to have all these programs that save loans, wage subsidies, deferrals. The grants are, we got to solve this stinking thing. And we need our best, brightest minds working to resolve it. Or we need a manufacturing company to convert over to do something and they'll pay you to do it. So it's a really interesting insight that it's confusing for people. These aren't like, the closest they got to the grant was the loan and you don't have to pay 10,000 back. But by and large, it's not the case.
That's really interesting. I'm going to open this up for Glenn, and I see Glenn just unmuted himself, so you rock it out.
Hey, Dave. Yeah. So one question I had is for small business, you said it's hard to get grants, but there must be some smaller grants or some grants that a small business can either seasonal grants or something that's coming up in the next few months that a small business could access at this time.
Yeah. So the big one for small businesses, like if you're not in agriculture, environment, or technology, you really want to go get like a summer student, right? So if you go on my website, I just interviewed Tech Nation. They're giving out $5,000 or $7,000 grants to cover summer students, post-secondary students, to help anything to do with your online presence, e-commerce, marketing. So you can go on my website, look up my interview with Tech Nation, the link's there, and they're looking for applications. They have a ton of money. And so I would urge you to do that.
That's amazing. Yeah, anybody that's offering jobs at this point, that's amazing.
Yeah, and I heard the government is offering something like summer students, like 100% for summer students. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, the Canada Summer Job Grant, but you had to already apply for that. So in the details of that aren't completely out yet, but if you have applied for Canada Summer Job Grant, you can go on to their website and get the details. They just, as I checked last week, the details weren't clear, but had you applied and you were on it, you might get 100% of your funding for the student. Like, how incredible is that?
Yeah, that's pretty wild.
So what about like micro businesses? Like you were saying, you can have a summer student that comes in, helps with social media, helps with things like that. Are there other things for, like, my business, I would kind of say it's a micro business, that a guy like, in my position, or if somebody's like a tradesperson that they're, self-employed or that kind of thing, what would you kind of recommend for them where maybe they need a summer student, but maybe they don't?
Well, it's a bit dicey, right? So there is the Canada Alberta Job Grant that covers training. So if there's a lot of training costs with those type of businesses. The other business where there's grants, at least in Edmonton, and I think in Calgary as well, and probably other municipalities, is the facade improvement program. So let's say you have a business and you're downtown in a city or town, and you want to renovate the front of your building. Well, there's not a lot of ROI on renovating the front of your building as a business owner. Right. However, the towns want their businesses looking nice, right? So they will fund 50% of getting your facade improved if you're in sort of a high commercial area. So I don't know if Morinville has one of them or not, but
Actually, I did catch wind that I believe, yeah, like don't quote me on it 100%, but I believe there is a program up to $10,000 for businesses that want to improve their facade. It's a matching grant, so I think, you know, I'd say definitely go look it up. Don't trust the music teacher for your grant information, but I did hear about that before COVID came out, actually.
and just so you know, like I want people to understand like why that's the case, right? They want it because the politicians get elected to increase businesses in the downtown core or in their business area. So they offer incentives for business owners to clean up the front of their properties. 97th Street in Edmonton is a classic example. You remember, you guys who are from Edmonton remember those buildings over the years have come a long way.
That's awesome. Oh,
Yeah.
and I see Lee Hodgins is giving applause, or is Lee Hodgins wanting to say something?
No, I think I recognize the difference between applause and putting my hand up on the icon here. I think I did it right. Anyway, so Dave, the question is, what about startups? Like, you know, I feel like, you know, we're talking a lot about businesses that are already more or less underway. Is there anything in the way of grants? Because I'm guessing maybe there are people out there that, you know, want to start a business, even now, especially, or maybe they have an idea now that they think will, you know, be a benefit during this time.
A lot of people have sat on ideas and now they got time.
Exactly.
Well, I would say for a lot of companies, if you want to benefit, you're starting a business and you want to benefit from grants immediately, the best thing to do is look at who has won grants. And there's a list of them. The federal and provincial government has to keep a list of them. You just Google grant recipients. And then you can go on there and determine who's won grants and who hasn't. So that is a way you can get into grants at a really quick state. Does that help, Lee?
Yeah, I'm not sure that answered the question. My question was, what do you do if you're a startup? Is there something specific for business startups in the world of grants right now? Did I?
The closest you're going to come to are the points I mentioned earlier, the micro business.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
Hey, Dave.
yeah.
So
go ahead.
if I'm a small business and like one of the things you mentioned was like some key sectors you talked about, agriculture. You know, I have some clients in the agricultural space.
Yeah.
You know, like for the like a small farm owner or someone owning that kind of small business, what sort of opportunities might be there for them for agricultural related businesses, just for especially small ones?
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. My internet connection, I got this new office and I don't have the internet working that well. So I apologize for that not working well.
Looks fine.
So I'll ask again, Dave. So
Yeah.
my question was about agriculture and small business in agriculture. Is there any specific programs you know about in agriculture?
Yeah. On the ag front, if you go Canadian Agricultural Partnership and you look at products to market, that's one grant that people can go after that allows for new entrants. And if what you want to look at in agriculture is something called new entrants. So go on to eligible companies that can apply in the program guide, and that'll answer. To Lee's point around startup, my point is, and I think this is really important to walk away with, is there's not a lot of straight up grants for someone to say, I want to start a business. Like you're going to get the micro voucher in technology. You're going to get maybe some new entrance grants in agriculture, and you're going to get maybe grants if you're reducing emissions. But that's basically it. It's a large myth. Beyond that, don't waste your time in grants. You know, it's once you get revenue going, then you graduate into higher winning, or more grants, I should say.
That's really an interesting point, David, because one of the things that I've found, because there's a large number of grants for musicians in entertainment, and I found that the work to get a grant, that in some ways it was easier just to go work and find money to get the same amount of money. there's definite ROI cutoff for certain grants. Of course, if you're big into ag and tech and you can get $500,000 or $1 million to help your company out, the ROI is worth the effort on it. But I think you know you've kind of said as you go through the years, people that are starting business out and they need small grants, 5,000, 10,000, you can be doing weeks worth of work to be able to get that grant.
Yeah, I always say, like, it's a myth. The fact that you think there's a lot of grants for startups, it's not true.
Now there are.
It doesn't. What's
Sorry,
that?
sorry, you go ahead. You finish.
But there are ways that as a startup, you can get involved with grants that'll help your business, which is as an eligible expense for grants, right? So that's a way they can work. So it's just getting your head around your startup and how it relates to grants that's most important.
Right, because they want you to be a proven entity. So if you're a startup, that's the toughest part. First 2 years, are you going to survive? Now, what do you think about organizations like Community Futures? They do small loans for startups, and they're government funded. They're not grants; it's loans. But do you have experience with those types of organizations?
I don't, but it is it's a common place where people should go, like Community for Futures, startup loans for starting a business. Now that's a whole other discussion of whether or not you should take a loan to start your business. That's kind of a discussion for another time. But yeah, that's more likely for the majority of people watching. When you think, I'm going to get a grant to start a business, I'm like, you're probably not going to do it. You probably need a loan unless you're doing something specific to what the government wants and they match perfectly.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I know because I have some experience with Community Futures. I did a loan because I needed a roof. It was like I amortized it over a short period of time, but it was a large cash outlay, and they were really good. And one of the things I learned that I think a lot of business people could take note from is they actually do help with business strategy, where it's just other business and financial experts that they'll help you with your business strategy and your business plan. If you need funding, like say to go to a bank, help you get all those kinds of things going. They do social media training. It's a pretty wonderful organization that isn't really a grant, and it's not cash they're giving you, but they're giving you knowledge and power to go and start it.
Cool.
Right on. Anything else from our amazing team of people there? I see Lee laughing. I see a thumbs up from Glenn. David, that was awesome. So really your message was, if I can recap, is it's a bit of a unicorn to get the government to throw a whole bunch of money at somebody that has an idea. It's more plausible for people to get grants when they're a proven entity.
Yes. And so if you're a startup, unless you're in agriculture, environment, or technology, like those are the best places for a startup business. And then you can kind of go through their systems and maybe get a $10,000 voucher. You're more likely, if you want to start a business, to go through micro business self-employment training program, which is government funded. So if you're on EI, you can get the program and you can make money while you're on EI, not get clawed back. That's the way the ecosystem works. I'm not asking you to like it. I'm just asking you to understand it.
That's awesome. That's really, really helpful. I always say that in music, I don't make the rules, I just teach them.
Tough love from David.
Tough love from David. We're used to that as a mastermind group. We are very, very used to that. Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate all of you more than you know. I look forward to next Monday. I guess, does that mean it's my turn to present next Monday? You guys have set the bar very, very high. So I'm
Get on with it there, Paul. Get after it.
I'm going to start preparing now. Yeah. I gotta keep up with these brainiacs that are pitching in on this. And so thank you guys. I appreciate it. I do know I've had some feedback from business owners that have contacted me and said this has been helpful. So I really appreciate that you guys are doing this. I just need to check in with Gordon. Gordon has been kind of texting a couple of things back and forth to me. How are we doing, bud? Are we, do we have any questions that are left out? And of course, I'm having an issue with Restream getting everything forwarded through. So last time
it's looking really good.
Perfect. Okay. So if we see some things, I'll tag people in posts, and we'll get questions answered. Again, thank you, gentlemen. This is amazing opportunity for me to be a part of participating with you guys in this. And thank you. And we'll see you next Monday. And have yourself a great week.
Thanks, Paul.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Paul.